Thank you so much for attending my PowerPoint presentation on how to play Position 1. Carry. Each day this week, I'm going to be coming out with a new video on one of the positions in Dota 2, explaining the philosophical bedrock of each role and hopefully giving players a head start if they want to start learning that position. These videos are also meant to be evergreen, meaning that they aren't suited to a particular patch and will hopefully still be almost entirely accurate years in the future. There will still be plenty of jokes, but just keep in mind that these are intended to inform as much as they are to entertain. And of course, I figured the easiest way to start would be the position that I have dedicated the most time to over the course of the past 5 years, though believe it or not, it still isn't the role I've played for the majority of the time I've played Dota. Position 1, also known as carry, is the safe lane farming role. The carry's job is to accumulate a golden experience advantage over the enemy team and then use that to convert it towards a win. Of course, scaling always starts at the bottom of the mountain, and the majority of carries have weak little bitch bodies and very little utility early on in the match. But given enough time to accumulate golden experience, they will hopefully become the strongest member of each team. As a result, they are the primary win condition, though the way that they go about it varies wildly depending on not only which carry a team has chosen, but also which carry the enemy team picked. Almost universally, a carry player will have one of two goals as soon as they load into a match. The first is to outpace the enemy win condition, which is when one carry is able to hit a massive power spike before the enemy carry has reached their full potential. In these situations, carries will still want a lot of golden XP, but they'll want to join in as a full-fledged member of the team before the enemy carry does, and use that 5v4 advantage to close it out. The second option is to become inevitable, standing alone as the single strongest character in the entire game, potentially even able to 1v5 or even perform the legendary 1v9 when your teammates really are feeding that bad. To put it simply, one carry will almost always outscale the other, and it's very important for you to be able to identify if you should go over or under your enemy. When a mid player talks about matchups, they're talking about the enemy hero that they're going to be facing right from the very start of the game. And while it is important for a position 1 to know how they should react to different position 3 picks, your primary matchup is one that you're not going to get involved in until very deep in the match. In an ideal situation, you and the enemy carry player won't even be interacting with each other for the first half of the match, but for the second half of that match, you are going to be the primary motivation for every decision they make. We'll be going over both the physical and mental skills that you need to learn as a carry player shortly, but for now, you should probably open up Steam, head to your profile, and click the edit button. Your username actually isn't that important when you're playing as a carry, but your profile picture is. Having the right one can inspire confidence in your teammates and invoke fear in your opponents, so I've given 3 options in the top right. Your best bets are going to be a main character from a sports anime with horrible animation, a contemporary and memeable motivational speaker, or an anime girl from the mid-2000s. All 3 of these will invoke slightly different emotions in both your allies and enemies, but personally, if I see Asuna in the year 2025, I'm going to give you last pick and double down. Now, the first thing you should be aware of when it comes to playing carry is that you will need to hit the buttons good. Carry is, on balance, the second most mechanically complex role in Dota, right after mid, though many Zoo players will argue that fact from the offlane. You're going to be buying a Black King bar pretty much every game, and so you're going to need to have decent reaction times, and when it comes to manta dodging, you're going to be learning how to do it for the rest of the time that you play Dota. A carry dying in the late game could be the nail in the coffin that loses your precious MMR, so it's incredibly important to have good reactions and get a feel for when to use your defensive items and how. On top of that, certain carries have very complicated mechanics built into their kit, and because you're going to be getting so many items, you're going to have a lot of different actives to manage as you play. You don't need to have the hands of a math rock guitar player in order to play carry effectively, and a lot of your mechanics can be developed as you learn the role itself. Still, if you're the kind of player who thinks mechanical keyboards are overrated and you use your dog as a mousepad, this may not be the position for you. Now, as for those other skills, one of the first ones you'll be learning is how to lane defensively. Due to their scaling potential, many carries begin the game with very low base stats, but you're going to have to interact with the lane constantly in order to get all of those last hits. Now, this is true for every farming role, but on carry, you also have to manage a lane equilibrium like crazy. Ideally, you're going to be spending the majority of the laning stage right next to your tower, and a bad aggro pull or aggressive last hitting can ruin that plan at the very beginning of the match. A funny side effect of learning position 1 is that you will also be practicing to play position 5, because all of the stack and pull timings will have to be ingrained into your brain for when your 5 is busy ganking the mid at 2.5 minutes. Now, your vulnerabilities do shore up a little bit come the mid game, but you are still extremely sensitive to ganks, which is a problem because you are also the #1 target for the enemy team whenever they pop a smoke. When they walk up the stairs to your triangle, your dumb little face is the number one thing they want to see, which is why you're going to have to develop a certain kind of defensive game sense as a Pos 1 player. When you first start doing this, you're going to be tracking enemy movements like a hawk, constantly checking the map to see who's visible, who isn't, and where the hell that Legion commander went. And you're still going to be doing this for the rest of the time you play the role, but you're also going to develop a sort of spidey sense for whenever the enemy team is about to pop out of nowhere and jump scare you. Have you ever been watching a pro match where a team pops smoke and the enemy carry just suddenly walks to a different part of the map for seemingly no reason? The smoke wasn't under a ward, there was no indication it was happening, but they just leave. That's an example of a carry player's intuition in action. You simply know. Building up that sense of intuition is the carry player's equivalent of going through puberty, and whether you like it or not, it will eventually happen to you. It may feel silly, but when you're watching a replay and notice that you dodged an entire enemy team by the skin of your teeth, you're going to be patting yourself on the back, which is good because nobody else will. Lastly, as the primary win condition for your team, you also need to recognize when you're strong enough to truly end the game. There are going to be times where you win a team fight and half of your team is screaming to go to Roshan and the other half is screaming to hit the tier 3 mid. You, as the carry player, get to decide which one to do. Depending on which one you tell your team to do, you could win or lose the game. Making high-stakes decisions is a very important part of playing carry, and if you're not comfortable with that, I recommend playing position 4 instead. The gambling companies are back, which means it's time to remind you that I have my Patreon linked in the description. Join today to check out multiple bonus videos, and I have some really wacky rewards for the higher tiers. And for all my existing patrons, thank you very much for your continued support. And now that you know what you're getting into from a gameplay perspective, I think it's also important to mentally prepare you for what it's like to be a carry player. The first thing that you need to know is related to the fact that you will be making a lot of high-stakes decisions, and that is that whenever you lose, you are going to be the first person people blame. It doesn't matter why your team lost or how many kills you have. In that post-game chat, they're going to tear your ass to shreds, so you need to be ready for it. There's a couple different reasons for this, and the first is that a good chunk of the time, when you do lose the game, it actually is the carry's fault, especially if the game went for longer than 35 or 40 minutes or so. Remember how you're the primary win condition for your team? Well, you're also the primary lose condition, and one bad BKB pop or a missed Manta dodge can throw 45 minutes of hard work down the drain for you and everyone else on your team. You will have position 4 players who are 0 and 9 screaming at you in voice chat over going a slightly different item build than they wanted you to go, and this is something that you're just going to have to put up with. Now, if you don't believe me and you think that mid players are actually the ones who are playing the most, go ahead and check the next time you have a player in your match with the word muted in their username. Go ahead and tell me what position he plays. And as for all the flaming that mid players receive, keep in mind that usually comes from the other mid player, which in my opinion, doesn't count. So now that you've developed the iron will of a space marine, you will now need to learn about carry matchups. A lot of it boils down to understanding which carry will have more of an impact in the late game when you're both fully slotted and ready to fight. Once it's all said and done, you will be able to look at a matchup like Templar Assassin vs Wraith King and instantly know exactly which item timings both will want to fight around and which one will win the game if it really goes the distance. It's Wraith King, by the way. Now this is true for pretty much every position in Dota, but the thing that makes carry matchups special is that the odds can change at any given moment, not because of what the carry himself does, but because of his own team. Those 4 guys can instantly change everything by either feeding an ultra kill or ganking them 3 times in a row, and every time it happens, your carry player will have to retabulate the odds, keeping everything into account. For more information about this topic, I highly recommend reading an article called Who's the Beatdown, published in 1999 by writer Mike Flores. It's originally about Magic the Gathering, but you don't need to know anything about that game in order to appreciate the wisdom he was dropping in the 20th century. And finally, a few more notes about suddenly becoming the team captain once the game is on the line. Earlier, I gave the example of winning a fight and picking between Roche and Tier 3, and that's a simple enough engagement, but it's important to note that you will become the single most important voice on your team for not just those kinds of decisions, but for everything. You will have to tell your team when to group up, which towers to take, which items to go, which heroes to gank, and other things. Now, what you decide to say will be very important, but what's even more important is how you decide to say it. Even though you get to be a mental punching bag for the rest of your team, you need to remain cordial, polite, in control, and confident the entire time, whether communicating via text or voice chat, or hell, even just pings. Once you get up into the higher ranks, people will generally be more open to the idea that the position 1 has the best understanding of a team's capabilities, and will usually listen to you by default. But in lower ranks, you're going to need to trick all of your teammates into thinking you're their dad. If you're using voice chat, try to bring your voice at least a few semitones down. and God help you if you ever stutter. Now, if all of this sounds appealing to you and you don't mind waiting 10 minutes to find a match every time you boot up this goddamn game, here's some easy carry heroes to get started. The first recommendation I have for you is Wraith King, and he's a pretty straightforward hero with a very clear win condition. He has a built-in crit, meaning you can focus your item build on application and utility, and between Radiance and the Skeletons, it's very easy to create an impromptu farming pattern. His main win condition is using Skeletons to hit buildings, and his ultimate to outlast the enemy team, trying to make it so that they run out of spells before you run out of HP. However, he is also a melee hero, and he doesn't deal nearly as much damage as some other carries, so you might want to add Drow Ranger to your rotation as well. She's about as stereotypical as a ranged carry can be, and her ultimate basically gives her an incredibly powerful ranged crit that ignores base armor. Unlike Wraith King, who can jump into 5 enemy heroes confident that at least something will happen, Drow Ranger is almost entirely reliant on very careful positioning. As an agility hero, she's also much more vulnerable to ganks, and so she's excellent for developing that sixth sense that I talked about earlier. Now, both of those carries are content to park themselves in the jungle for the first 25 minutes of the game, but if you want someone a little bit more active and with a lot of death ball potential, be sure to check out Luna. Her farming tool is built directly into her kit, she has a high impact teamfight ultimate, and she is amazing for enabling a death ball due to the bonus damage granted to her and all of her teammates with Lunar Blessing. She's also got some funky build options and some interesting matchups, though notably she doesn't scale quite as hard as some of the other carries here. And speaking of scaling, if you really want to throw yourself all into the idea of learning carry, go ahead and pick up Medusa. She's one of the hardest scaling carries in the entire game, and she's also one of the fastest farmers thanks to Split Shot. However, she starts the game incredibly weak and needs a ton of time and efficient farming in order to become the late game raid boss she's infamous for being. Mana Shield also means that she's playing an entirely different game from anyone else when it comes to durability, and you're going to be learning a whole lot of fun facts about her when you decide to pick her for the first time. She's a very strange form of carry and is often stereotyped as being very selfish, because whenever you pick her, you instantly become the main character of the match. She's also the kind of carry who is so polarizing that a single mistake in the late game can completely ruin the match for both you and all of your teammates. If you want to speedrun the process of learning every single aspect of carry, go ahead and start picking Medusa. And if the enemy team picks Anti-Mage, run. I wrote a little bit about how Position 1 has changed since I first started playing the game. Feel free to read it if you like. And finally, here's just a couple different tips and tricks to help you in the learning process. One of the best pieces of advice I can give to an aspiring carry player, especially one who's coming from a less mechanically intensive role such as support, is to be honest about your mechanical skill. Yes, you could pick up a hero like Morphling or Naga Siren and just headbutt the wall until you eventually learn how to play perfect micro and macro as well as every other hero in the game, but you don't have to do that. While it is an on-balance more mechanically intensive role, there are a ton of heroes that are very simple and straightforward to play, such as the ones that I said in the previous slide, except maybe Dusa. There will come a day when you know every matchup like the back of your hand and can manta dodge Split Earth 3 times in a row in Polygon Trainer, but that day is not today. And if there is a certain mechanically complex carry hero that you eventually want to play, you can use the easy heroes to learn the basic concepts before graduating to them later on. The next tip I have is to help you build up that steel trap brain that I mentioned earlier. I call it the Never Mute Challenge. The idea is basically exactly what it says on the tin. If someone is being annoying, flaming the shit out of you, or just spamming their microphone, keep them on. Don't tab out and boost your music even higher in order to drown them out. No, you're going to go ahead and listen to every single thing that they have to say. You don't have to process whatever they're trying to say, and doing so probably isn't even in your best interest, but you need to have them as background noise in order to build up your level of focus and tolerance for other people. If you've ever seen that movie where Adam Sandler becomes a basketball coach, there's a reason he made his players shoot threes while he called his mother a whore. Those 4 players on your team will be your Adam Sandler, and they're going to say even worse things about your family. Embrace it, hit the speed face, and every now and again, one of them might actually make a decent call. Of course, it'll be up to you to determine if you're actually going to follow it or not. And lastly, when it comes to the macro movements of Dota 2, that's one of the hardest things to learn as a carry player because your goals are so different from everyone else on your team. The simple solution is to just copy whatever the enemy carry is doing. What I mean by this is that if they're in the jungle farming away from sight, then that is where you should be as well. And if they're teleporting to fights and being brawlic with their BKB, go ahead and do that too. One of the reasons this works is because carry is one of the most popular positions to play in all of Dota, and the odds of the enemy carry also learning the role are relatively low. By doing this, you're also forcibly becoming the apprentice of the enemy carry player for 45 minutes at a time. There's nothing they can do to prevent this. and I find that funny. In conclusion, carry is a taxing role, and you should absolutely play it. Since carry is such a popular role, you're going to be spending a lot more time on the main menu than you did before, so go ahead and get comfortable with those Crownfall minigames. Peace on planet Earth.